Brian?
Yep.
All right, we'll stand
There we
up
go.
and start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Everybody will. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, that seems a little bit even more similar tonight after this being 9/11. I'm sure we all remember where we were. Always a day that none of us will ever forget. As we go through, we don't have a long agenda tonight, but as we go through the agenda, please keep in mind our vision, our missions, and our core values, and they're all listed there on your agenda as we make decisions. Looks like we have a quorum, so the next thing we need to do is approve the agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you, Tom. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Lanny. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any changes at all? I don't believe there is, so all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda approved. Hearing of delegations, none listed. Consent items, you should have received those with your packet on Friday. Hope you've got a chance to look them over. And I believe there's a few extra bills here in front of you too, so I hope you've had a chance to look at them. And any discussion or comments?
The general fund cash and bank comparison, you'll see August 2022 until this year, there's about a $700,000 discrepancy. That's ESSER dollars. For 3 years, we had basically that 700,000 amount in there. Those funds are now all released, so that's the difference. So if you go back to prior to ESSER dollars, this is what our cash balance was. This, however, is prior to us putting Laverne general fund cash in here. We don't have that all closed yet. It'll be a few months before we do that. That will put it back to similar place, maybe a little bit more.
I have that other sheet with that cash on it too. So.
Yeah, in your reports, there does have the Laverne balance, so a little over $1 million, I think.
Wow. All right, any other comments or questions? If not, we need a motion then to approve the consent items.
So moved.
Thanks, Todd. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thanks, Andrew. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Consent items approved. Under board reports, kind of a month we all like to start thinking about, if you, Lanny, maybe you haven't been on the board when we've done this, but we adopted a building as a board member. And we try to visit that building a little more often, and not that we can't be welcomed at all, but we try to visit that building a little bit often and choose different ones each year. And so, does anybody have a preference right now, and would like to speak up and take a building? Well, where was I? I was middle school last year. I'd stay with that one more year, because I did semi-well, not very well. So I would like to try to improve on that.
We probably put 2 in the middle school and 2.
Yeah, we usually do 2 in middle school, 2 in high school, and then 1 for each elementary.
I'll take middle school.
Okay.
I'd do Bertha Cott. I don't think I haven't asked Bertha Cott for you.
All right.
I'll volunteer for Lucia Wallace.
Okay.
I'll take high school.
And what's left then?
Brian.
Jay and Brett?
Bryant.
Yeah, Bryant and 1 high school.
Brent took high school.
Oh, I'm sorry, Brent. I guess we'll give Jay Bryant
Yeah.
then, by that. Do try to get into all the schools. You really won't believe the paintings. I mean, a lot of painting was done over this summer, and just the changes. They all look like a fresh look to them. So you'll be real surprised if you haven't been in them. So, all right, Joe, we'll move on to superintendent's report then.
In the superintendent report, I have a table that the building principals fill out each year in the first 2 weeks of the school. It's what we hope reflects the students that we had in each grade building at that time. I am somewhat hesitant always with this information, as there's a lot of things that can change between when we take these numbers in October 1st, which is our certified enrollment number. But what it does do is it gives us a good comparison on year to year. And that's probably the number I would encourage you to look at. So a total of 1567, last year 1578. So we have less students in our building. Most of those, the middle school is down 445 to 414. That's the 124 right here, these 8th graders going out to 9th grade and then bringing in 95. That's really what the difference is. It's just the 8th grade going out and the 5th grade coming in. Lucia Wallace is bigger than the year before. Bryant is bigger than the year before. Bertha Godfrey is slightly smaller. So good numbers. What we predicted next month when I talk to you about our certified enrollment, that will be much larger than the previous year's certified enrollment number because all of our Laverne students will now be resident district students. They won't be whole grade shared in or open enrolled in. So our certified number, which is the number that we're funded on, will be much larger, the largest we've had in many, many years, over 25 years probably.
So on this, the total includes 3-year-old, 4-year-old, and transitional kindergarten?
It does, yeah.
The other one's just, okay.
And I put that in there, that's a really good question, Todd, because so the K-12 total would be the fully funded total. That's the total that we're going to get 1.0 for every student. We get 0.5 for our preschool kids. We do not receive funding for our 3-year-old preschool kids. So that's why I always put that K-12 number in there because that's our fully funded number.
And what's the transitional, TK, is that transitional kindergarten?
Yeah,
Is that what that stands for?
funded as, they're 1.0s also.
Okay.
Yes, 1.0s.
Good question. Look like pretty strong numbers yet, though. So
Yeah,
that's
very good numbers. Our high school, 463, or 473, the largest we've had in our high school in a number of years. I think we over 15 years for sure. So very good numbers still. SIAC meeting, we're in the process of establishing our dates for the SIAC, which is our school improvement advisory committee. Before we establish the dates, I want to get your guys' feedback on what information we want from that group. This was the question I also posed to our administrators last week in our meeting. Our SIAC group consists of parents, staff, board members, administrators. It's a really valuable group from us. It's a group that we've got great feedback and great information from in the past that's helped us make some changes and make decisions that I think that have made us better. So kind of a question for you guys is what is some valuable information that we could get from this group that could help us as a district? An example, I think, would be the 4-day student week. What are their thoughts on a 4-day student week? What are their concerns with a 4-day student week? How would that impact them in their lives as a parent or a community member or a staff member or whatever they may be? So that's something that will ask them for sure. Do you guys have any other pieces of information you think would be valuable for us to gather from the SIAC group?
Think about it, make sure you're aware, Joe,
Yep,
on
yep.
that. It seems like there's always discussions that come up. I've been a part of that, so.
Yep, you've been a part of it, Peter's
Yep.
been on it as well, and that is stuff that you can give us just something to think about. We'll set those dates here. What we wanted to do was once the Iowa School Performance Profiles become public, which we think is very, very soon, as all that information is available, they just have to put it together into the profile now, then we would set that meeting. Over the next 5 years. replace 12 of those 15 at a savings of $15,000 per teacher, we still have a shortfall in FY '28. Not a shortfall that we need to be concerned on, but just to know that an early retirement program is something that's needed to maintain a balanced budget in our future and down the road.
But 3 of those would be even more than 15,000, right? Because you're not.
3 of them would be total.
15.
Yep, so good question, Todd. That's my next point on there.
Okay, sorry.
We'll have 15 eligible teachers on June 30th, 2024. I anticipate replacing 12 of those 15. And that goes back to some of the positions we added with our ESSER dollars. We added some fifth sections, we added some interventionists. So when those students, those bubble of students where we have the fifth sections, when they move through and we have retirements, we'll be able to, those positions can go away just through attrition, which is always the way we want to do it. Same thing with the interventionists. If we have someone in that department retire, we can go back to what we had staffing wise. So we would replace 12 of those 15. The savings from the 3 not replaced, Todd, would be about $240,000. The savings of replacing the other 12 would be over $400,000. So the annual savings of those 15 teachers would be over $600,000. Now, I would recommend a program that's capped at 5 per year. As the teacher shortage would certainly make it difficult to hire more than that. Although we do believe we're more successful in hiring an early retiree position because we know about it earlier and we can start hiring as early as January in most of those cases. Also, there will be additional staff members that are eligible each year. 15 are eligible just on June 30, 2024. June 30, 2025, there would be more. But 15 is what we would need to save those dollars. So we could very well save more than that over a 4-year time period. I'm just giving the example with the ones who are eligible in this fiscal year. A proposal, I can bring proposals back in October if that's the direction we want to go. And those can be adjusted, approved, wherever we want to go with that. Lisa has built some calculations based off the program we used in 2019, where we would provide each retiree 1% of their teaching salary multiplied by years of service, capped at 25. Simplify that formula, it's 25% of what their final contract is. And then paying out $25 per sick day. For most employees, that's $2,500 because they have 100 sick days, which is where that's capped as well. So 25% of their final year's contract, plus $2,500 from sick days, and then 5 years of insurance is what we've built most of our models and calculations on, and our management can afford that proposal. Now, one-time payment, we do it over two months, so it's in 2 fiscal years typically. No. One-time cash of that 25% of their contract and their sick days. Typically, we do that in July and January, so it's in 2 fiscal years. And then 5 years of insurance. So we pay their insurance for 5 years. In 2019, we did that for 10 years. Our management can handle 5 years better. We believe that's what we've built the models on so far. But again, I can bring back proposals that reflect lots of things if that's what you guys are interested in. That's some feedback I think I'm looking for tonight. Something else to consider, and I would like some feedback on tonight, is would this be a program for our teachers, or would it be for classified staff as well? And that's a discussion we've had before. The savings for an early retirement of classified is different because we don't hire the new person for less than what the person's making. So there's not a general fund savings in a classified staff retirement program.
So question, 25% salary retirement plan. You said July and January, or January and July, 2 fiscal years payments.
Yeah.
Okay, we take federal tax.
Two calendar years, I'm sorry.
We
Same
take,
fiscal year.
we take federal tax out of that from the payment. Okay. Now, the 5 years insurance, or that 5 years of dollars that we keep it, and we pay their insurance, the single, whatever the single is, up to
Yeah,
10,000.
that's what we did in the
Okay.
last time, is up to 10,000.
And if the person says, I don't need insurance, I'm getting it downtown through my spouse, what happens then?
There's no cash in lieu of. So
Okay.
if we had a program like we had the last time, the only cash is the 25% of their contract and their sick days. The other benefit.
If they choose to take it?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
There's different plans they can look at too.
There are. They really just stay on our
Right,
staff's
pretty
insured, for 5 more years, so they can take the $500 deductible, they can take the high deductible health savings account, either one.
If they choose not to take it, the money stays here.
Correct.
Okay. Then going back a little bit, and trust me, memory on this. What's the dollars we receive every year from the RUN? I know it runs on 28.
Yep.
What's the dollar amount per year
700,000.
times 5 years?
Yep.
Okay.
I'm not a huge fan of early retirement because I think you lose teachers and looking at the list of teachers that kind of think they'll take advantage of this. I think it's like key people, so, but it makes sense to save money for the district, and I think it probably is necessary. So I think it's great for the teachers. I'm not a fan of it for classified hours for teachers, right? Classified, it's not saving us money.
Correct.
So I mean, it's purely a cost savings issue. It's not a gift retirement that we're trying to give our people, because I'd rather have those people, particularly on this list, stay. So I guess that as far as programs go, I think it's up to you really to get the best proposal to us that's going to work for our people and for them. So I don't think we need to have a meeting with 3 different options for us to vote on. I think that's something that we can develop on our own and go for. So
Agree.
Has there been any communication with these teachers to see if there is interest? I mean, out of these 15 or?
There has not been. Wanted to have this discussion first tonight before we get down that road. Also, I would encourage you guys, if you wanted to make a motion on a proposal, I would encourage that motion to include an intention of a program the following year as well. We can't approve an early retirement program for the next year because that's in a different budget that we haven't approved yet. One thing I wouldn't want is the middle school to replace 5, or elementary. I would say, we can't go over 5 at any one level either. So we can have 5 total, but we can't. We need to limit it at levels because having to replace 5 middle school teachers or 5 elementary teachers, that would be difficult. It needs to be a total of 5.
Yeah, puts us in a, have we draw out of a hat then?
I think we would have to come up with some qualifications, whether we went to years of service, longest in the district, age. Those are some things, some options that we can give in our proposals.
high salary, and it's about cost savings, right?
Yeah, I probably wouldn't. I don't know if on my recommendation would be highest salary. Many of these teachers' salaries are going to be the same as they're at the time.
I think the 5 years of insurance is also going to let people look at years that they feel they can do that.
Yep.
To where you need to get to possibly
Yeah.
with your insurance coverage. And like Brett said, I'm probably not as far classified. I know you hate to say it, but we have to run our budget like a business. And there isn't so many ways we can control the budget. This is one way we can. We don't get a whole lot of control.
Is this something that's going to, we did this several years ago,
Yeah.
and is this something that every 5 years we're going to do just to stay solvent, or?
I think if you don't have increased enrollment, you gotta continue to look at ways to adjust your budget. If you have increased enrollment, then that takes care of increases in salaries and benefits and so on. I don't ever anticipate us having skyrocketing enrollment. I think we'll be steady. So that's a challenge for all rural school districts, is how do they continue with low state funding on a year-to-year basis, how do they continue to give appropriate raises for all of their staff? They have to find adjustments to their budget. That's the method we've used 5 years ago. Looking at now is early retirement is one of those methods that you can use.
Is there a way to, so there's a minimum years of service?
For sure. We'll, typically we put in 15 is our minimum when we do these things in the district. But again, that's something we can, those are part of the options and things that I'll give you. If we mirrored this exactly as we did the last time, it would be 15 years in the district, 1% of their salary multiplied by years of service, capped at 25%, $25 per sick day, and then 5 years of insurance. Things we would add this time is a max of five employees per year, with the intentions of the program existing for 4 years. Those are probably how I would write it if I wrote it out right now.
And we need to start this next year,
Yep.
I believe.
So if we approve that in October, applications would go out to our staff right then. They would have until January to fill that out, which is more than the legal time that they need. As we receive those, then we'll post anticipated jobs. That's what allows us to hire in January, is as we receive the applications, then we'll post anticipated jobs, and hopefully be able to fill them right away. So this isn't an issue we're looking at spring, it's something to take care of in January, February.
But if I'm understanding correctly, we don't necessarily need the financial piece this next year, right?
Correct.
It's coming down the road, but we can't afford to wait, because then we'll be too many teachers that will be turning over in a year's period of time.
And that shortfall, this red number here just grows, right? You know, this is what that number is, taking 15 teachers out of our, because they're already out in this model here. They're already not there.
Got it.
Sounds like we'd like.
So even if you did early retirement from 15 years, you're still $200,000.
Yeah.
Shortfall in what year?
To 28. But again, 15, we anticipate there could be more than that. There's also some funding things that are happening in the state with essays that we think will probably balance that. So we're okay with that number.
Okay.
Last item I have in my report is school board elections. September 21 is the candidate filing deadline by 5 p.m. in our office. So I know we have 4 of our positions come open in this year, and that's the date to have those back in. November 7th is the school election day. November 13th or 14th is the canvass of votes. Since we're a multi-county district, ours takes actually to the 21st. We'll have our organizational meeting in December with our new candidates.
All right, any other questions or thoughts? Okay, we'll then move on to communications, administrative report. No, communications board, yep, we got superintendent.
I linked, and it's in your packet, just my goals for last year. Just for you guys to look at those once again. That's something we'll set in October. We'll set my goals for the future. So that's just something for you to look at, refresh yourself on those. If you have other ideas, just let Rodney know over the next month, and that'll come out in the memo a couple different times, and it'll be something that we work to establish for the October meeting.
So then we look at December, April.
For our progress reports.
Reports, yep.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now I think we've moved on into administrative reports, and we have Mr. Roder, Mr. Weeks, and I believe we've added one. Mrs. Rapp.
Mrs.
Yes,
Rasmussen.
we did.
So, first of all, thanks for having us here tonight. I'm going to talk briefly just on a couple of things that the middle school is doing to combat absenteeism in the school. Like every grade, I mean, it's grown. Joe, you presented on it. First day of school is growing. It's getting worse, especially after COVID. And I'm really going to shorten mine down. I'm going to talk about Tier 1. One of the things we're really trying to do is work with our staff. We brought our SEL leads together on what teachers can do to help combat these students that are absent. We're really focused on teachers making contact with the students, and that's where they're at, whether it's through text messaging, email, what we call our bulldog-grams, but reaching out in a very positive manner and being very intentional with our relationship with students. We have found over and over again, kids are missing school. We don't like it, but to be honest, they're giving us what they got. And we're trying to reach out to those students where they're at. And we're doing that with our teachers now, bringing them on board with this absenteeism, working with students, meeting with them, building those relationships, and really celebrating the positives when they are here versus, hey, you haven't been here a week and the first thing you hear is something negative. That's not a real welcoming environment to the students. We are looking at Tier 2, which is, we'll use our circles that we have. We'll circle up with these students and talk about what's going on. We actually did a little bit of this last year, and we saw a drastic difference in students' attendance. But again, that Tier 2 is meeting with the kids, talking about what's going on. Sometimes those conversations take a very different path than what you might expect. But building those relationships, our role in that thing is, as administration, will be to be reaching out to parents as well, letting the parents know what's going on, that we're meeting with the student. Also following up, hey, here's the plan that the team came up with for the student to get them here. After that, we're going to get into what we call our Tier 3. That's much more the administration heavy side, where we're contacting parents, we're meeting with them, we're developing plans. It does mean we're going out to the houses, we're doing home visits, we're picking up kids. They say something's wrong, we're going to the house and trying to find a solution to get them here. Hopefully it doesn't get to this, but it could also mean getting law enforcement involved, your county attorney, truancy and things like that. But we're working very hard to build those relationships. Right now, we carried over from students from last year. We have 4 students that we are in our Tier 3 right now, so if they're not here, they're getting communication with first thing in the morning. I've got a couple that I text every morning at 7:15. I check in with the parent and the student. How's the morning going? Going to be on time? Right now it's working very well, just got to get them here on time. But they are getting here, and we're going to keep that up. Many times the parents are asking for help. I hear quite often we don't know, so it's a matter of giving them community resources too. We have a number of resources in our community that we can draw on to try to help those students and families get here. So it's a tiered approach. It's something that we're growing. We're going to work on every month. We meet with our SEL team, but we want to combat that absenteeism. Right now, the last few years, but we'd love to see that get better. And most of our absenteeism is driven by a handful of heavy hitters that miss a lot of days. So that's what we're doing with attendance, trying to combat that. After hearing Joe's message, we want to make a difference. So as a middle school, that's what we're doing. I think Rudy's going to come up. We introduced a cell phone policy last year, or this year. He's going to talk about that real quick, and then we'll have Megan talk about some SEL stuff.
So this fall is our first year with that new cell phone policy that we had put into the handbook, and it's district policy, and every building is following that new policy, and we feel like it's going fantastic at the middle school. We've had a total of 19 cell phones that have been confiscated under the policy, which is too bad. But we've only had to call parents twice, and every parent that we've called has been very supportive. One parent said, well, I gotta come and pick up the phone today. No, we're not gonna get back to them, no. So, well, that's fine, I can get it in a couple days. So that works for us, no problem. But we've been hearing tremendous support from the teachers. The parents are all on board. Most of the students are not thrilled, but they are absolutely able to follow the policy right now. I expected to see a lot of confiscations early with a gradual drop-off, and that really hasn't been the case. We're getting about 0 some days, and at most we've taken 3. And it's really, the kids know the policy, they know the rule, they know our expectations, and for the most part, they're able to meet our expectations on that. So I think that, I do think it will drop off more as we get further into the school year, but overall, I'm really happy with the way that they've participated in class, the way they've communicated with each other, and the way that they've been able to keep them either in their pockets or in their lockers. So that policy is going really well.
Have you noticed any, what are some positives that have come from this?
Yeah, I think overall it's the communication that's happening with the students. I think we have more conversations happening within the classrooms. The biggest impact that I've seen is at the end of class periods, where you might have 2 or 3 minutes, and that's not enough time to start the next activity, and where we might have said before, go ahead and take some free time, and then every hand goes into the pockets and pulls out a cell phone. We now see conversations happening during those times, because that's not a time that's for cell phones anymore. And I do think that over time we're going to see a reduction of the cyberbullying and things like that. We haven't seen any this year, but it's early. But I do expect that would go down over time as well. But for me, it's just the overall vibes, it's the conversations, it's the communication.
So that's been really pleasant to see with the kids. They're just talking amongst themselves.
That's great to hear about interactions with kids. There's a couple different objectives we wanted to account, but certainly that's one. The constant distraction of the cell phone that it impacts learning was the big one that caused our discussion to start. And the longer that they're not accessible to them, I think the less that distraction is. So I think this only benefits learning more the further and further we get down the road.
Last year we started looking at our conditions for learning survey because it was not where we thought that we should be. Megan is the leader of our SEL team, and she helped create this presentation and really helped drive the changes that we were making that we think made a big difference. So Mr. Rasmussen here is going to go over for that.
Hi guys. So like Rudy said, I am an instructional coach here at the Algonah Middle School, and with that role, we have monthly meetings with our PLC leads, which is kind of our ELA teachers and our math teachers, and then we also have an SEL team. And part of my role is I help build the agenda and drive that PE. And so part of that has been really motivating us to look at our conditions for learning and how can we change, how could we improve. Last year, like we said, we had quite a drop in some of our things for conditions for learning, and so that's been our focus, and we'll kind of talk about that as we go through. So the first slide, yep. So conditions for learning, if you don't really know what that is, it's a survey given out right around the time of the Iowa assessments, and it looks at 5 different data topics, which include physical safety, boundaries and expectations, emotional safety, adult-student relationships, and then student-to-student relationships. And in our case in the middle school, you're going to see 2 data points because 5th grade is actually classified as the elementary, and their survey is slightly different than 6 through 8. You will see large percentages differences as well, and sometimes that just has to do with the way that the wording is done in elementary versus the middle school. But we'll look at the overall trends. So here's our 2023 results snapshot for grades 6 through 8, and you guys can kind of look where in the highlighted yellow part is the change since 2022. So what we did here is we pulled our data for just the middle school out. The survey is a 612 survey, and you're able to look by building. So you can see here, we're comparing it to our Prairie Lakes area. And so for our physical safety, Prairie Lakes went up about 1, and our growth was 16. Boundaries and expectations, 6 and we grew 8. And our largest increase, which we were pretty excited about, was our emotional safety. And we'll look deeper into what those questions mean. But we grew 18. And adult to student relationships, and you'll see student to student relationships, both of those went down in Prairie Lakes while ours went up. They're not exactly where we want them to be yet, but the idea that we're growing is exciting to us. Yep. So this is the 5th grade. Just because their test is a little different, we have to pull that data separately, or their survey is a little different. As you can see here, growth was occurring in almost all the areas as well. We'll talk a little bit about that adult to student relationships, but again, emotional safety was a large growth for us as well with 19. So the first one is physical safety. You can kind of look at that trend line, and then the bottom is where the black line is where we're at compared to the state. So as far as physical safety, the state is at 58% for grade 5 or 3-5. That's how it's kind of put, and we're in the middle school at 73%. So our emotional or our physical safety for our students, they're feeling really safe here at the middle school. And 6-8, you can see quite the jump. We're not quite at the state average, which is 48%, but we're definitely showing growth and pretty excited to see where we're moving. And then the next slide kind of shows what questions those are. So to give you a little example of why how the percentages are done, 46%, but if you look at each of our individual ones, we're growing 3%, 7%, 16%, 9%, and you can see if it says 0 times, that is viewed as a positive remark. So 81% of our students say been disciplined at school for fighting theft or damaged property 0 times. So 0 times is what we're really looking at here. But the key here is, if you look at that 46%, you're like, wow, that's kind of low. But how the state does it is, if a student marks negative on any one of these, so if they mark 1 time or more on any one of those questions, the whole section is marked negative. So the only way you get a positive percentage is if they mark positive on every single one of these questions.
Which is only the 0.
Which is only the 0. So if a student would ever say, like, stolen something, if somebody stole one thing from them in the last 30 days and they marked 1 time, then all of those questions are then viewed negative. So when we look at it, so sometimes you'll see like 29% is our average, but each individual one would be close to 90%, but because they marked 1 negative, and they're all negative.
Or there's one tough question that they're not, no, that's, and then it brings the whole section down.
So go to the next one. If you have questions at any time, just let me know. So boundaries and expectations, again, we're trending upward in both, and with our benchmark compared to the state. In 5th grade, we're at 80%, while the state is at 75%. And in the middle school, the state is at 36%, and we're now at 44%. So we went from the state average and we increased. So when we're looking at those, here you can see the overall percentages that were positive. So for instance, the first question, there are clear rules about where students can and what students can and can't do. 96% of our students mark strongly agree or agree with that, 96%. The next question 2, 89%, and then you can see 98, 93%, 85%. So they're all really high, but because a student might mark negative on one of them or lower on one of them, then that's what brings our average down. Some of the questions we're focusing on this year is number 6, I feel safe at school. That one we saw like a 2% decline, and so that's a focus for our SEL group. What does it look like to increase that? How do we make our students feel more safe at school? Why currently might they not feel safe? So those are kind of questions we ask. We then drive our circles around these questions, or our community circles, and we really focus on all of our advisory time, focusing on different things that the survey might provide us. One of the other questions, question 9. My school lets a parent or guardian know if I'm doing a great job or a good job, 65%. One of the other questions before or after talked about my school lets my parents know if I ever get in trouble, and that was very high. And so we're like, well, it's funny that we're really good at communicating when we're getting in trouble, but maybe we need to have something in place to communicate when we are doing well. And so our SEL group has really been focusing on that. And with that, we've made a promise to each other that we're going to send out Bulldog grants when our students are doing something well, and we've made goals to how many we're going to send out, and just really acknowledge that and make sure when we're looking at our classes that we are acknowledging the positives, because we think that's an easy one to control, and that's an easy one in our hands, is just to say, communicate out the positive. Some of these are very hard to control because they're not in our hands, but this one we can do. So that's one of our focuses.
Quick question on that
Yep.
one. Is the positive strongly agree and agree?
Correct.
Okay, because I would have thought based on all those numbers up here that would be higher than 44%. But
So how that is correct, but if a student marks like all of them positive but question 9, then they're all negative.
So the 44%,
Does that make sense?
that 44% of our students answered every single one of those questions positively.
I gotcha.
And
Yeah.
56% of them answered one or more questions
I thought it was
negatively.
question by question.
Right, yeah, no, so that overall number really makes it look way worse than it is.
This number is tough for us to, we have to dig deeper to see what specifically are they saying, because we don't learn a lot from this number, to be honest with you. We gotta go deeper than that too.
Yeah, for sure. Okay,
To
makes
me,
sense, thank you.
the relevant information is our growth and how we compare to the state average. Those are the two that I really like to focus on. Are we getting better, and how do we compare to peers?
The next topic is emotional safety, and this one we saw a lot of growth in, which is pretty exciting to us. So we're actually in 5th grade, you can see where we're at compared to the average in the state. The state average is 20%, and we're over at 39%, which is almost off the charts. And 6-8, we're excited about that because we went from 16% last year to 34%. So, doubling it. And that made us go from less than the state average to well over the state average of emotional safety. So some of those questions, this is part of the show on the next page. And those were exciting. So like question 1 went up 22%. I was called names, was made fun of, or teased in a hurtful way. We've really been doing a lot to combat the idea of bullying or picking on each other, and with Mr. Week and Mr. Roeder here, we've just really been working on that. We don't allow it in class, it's become part of our culture, and they know that if something like that's happening, they will have to follow up with Mr. Week, and then usually have a restorative conversation as well. And so we're just really changing our culture. We're also doing a lot of circles around that. What does respect look like? Why do we deserve respect? How do we respect each other's differences? So a lot of that. As you can see, you can look through the other ones, but we've increased, 11%, 16%, a lot of growth. And some of the great ones, even when we look at how social media has influenced students, like something hurtful has been shared about me on social media. 86% of our students did 0 times in the last, I think that was a 30 days one?
Yeah,
last month, but still 86% of our students at that time, and this is when we, they even have cell phone policy, said no, like they don't feel like that's affecting them at school, which is exciting to us because that's something really hard to control. So the next two, adult-to-student relationships and student-to-student relationships, are the 2 areas we still continue to work on a lot. They were our areas last year. They're the hardest areas for us. But our group is really trying to tackle that, and we come up with really good ideas, and we meet monthly. We continue to focus on this. Through this, we also survey our students throughout the year. A lot of questions focused around these, so we can try to work through our advisories on certain topics like this. So 5th grade, we're watching that trend. It's decreasing over the years, and we're trying to figure out why. What are the things that are changing that our 5th graders feel like they don't have a stronger relationship with adults that they may have in the past. And we don't really have an answer for that at this time. We're trying to figure out if there was anything in scheduling that has changed, or anything in particular that makes them feel like they don't necessarily have that adult-to-student relationship.
One thing that was floated, people said that there used to be 2 advisories, and now we have 1. We don't necessarily want to go back to 2 advisories, but we could be seeing an impact there. So it's trying to figure out why that's coming down and what we can do to reverse the trend a little bit.
They're also shifting from having 1 teacher to having 6 teachers
Right.
now. So they're not building a deeper connection just with 1, they're trying to build connections. But again, I'm not saying that's the cause. They're
Only
just-
because this one is showing 5th grade over the years, so it's a different, I
That
don't
was
know.
my initial thought.
But-
And
but how
I
do
would
we
say the
combat
same
those
thing,
things?
but that's 5th grade, and 2 years ago, 88% said they had a relationship. So it's not, the dynamic is not different.
I do think that is the case when we look at like the state averages of that particular 5th grade. It's tough because 5th grade's taking the elementary test and they're being compared to elementaries, and our 5th grade is middle school. And so there is going to be inherently harder adult-student relationships because they are spending less time with them, for sure.
And then you can see in the 6th through 8th grade, we are continually grow there. 2 years ago, we were at 43%, and we took a large dip last year, and we moved back up to 29%, still below the state average. And so this is obviously an area that we will continue to focus on.
Really interesting here, the perception of a fifth grader who typically is in an elementary in comparison to a middle school, sixth or eighth grader, where the state average is 29% and here it's 80%. So certainly students' perceptions of what an adult-student relationship looks like in an elementary setting to a middle school setting in the state are much different.
So when we look at some of the individual questions, some that we focus on is the first one, adults in the school respect differences in our students. 89% of our students would say that is the case, and then we've increased by 7%. So we feel really good about that. One of the ones we're still kind of working on is question 7, students treat adults who work in the school with respect. That one's always a hard one. That's not teachers treating students, that's students treating adults. And our students, only 46% of them would say that the students treat the adults in the school with respect. We don't necessarily agree with that. And so some of our SEL conversations is about growth mindset and about the idea of teachers pointing out when there's respectful cases going on, because we think a lot of times, it's not that you try, but sometimes you start nagging over and over, hey, get your books out, hey, get your books out, hey, stop doing this or that, instead of acknowledging that 90% of the kids are doing what they need to be doing, and they are listening to the teachers, and they are respecting them, but they don't hear that as much as, hey, get off the counter, hey, you know what I mean? And so in our SEL group, we've been talking about just word choice. How does that change? How does our perspective of just the way that we show our classroom to our students, does that allow them to see that, for the most part, we are being respected? And then also, we did go 11% there, and I do think a lot of that has to do with the restorative conversations we're having. So when the respect isn't given and there has to be a removal, they go to Mr. Weeks' office, they have a conversation about how do they repair the harm. The teacher and the student and Mr. Week have a meeting, they have a restorative conversation, the student repairs the harm and is back. And I also think that the students are seeing that if you're going to be disrespectful, that's fine, but you're also going to have a conversation and repair that harm. So then next time, hopefully, we can be more respectful in that situation. And then our last one is student-to-student relationships. It's really hard there in 5th grade when you're at 90%. And then the 6th through 8th grade, we took a large dip on that one too last year. We went from 44 to 15%, and we're working our way back up. So we're now at 25%. And some of those questions, if you want to look closely. The first question, that one's a hard one for us. Middle school's hard. The dynamics in the world are hard for us, but the students in the school will respect each other's differences. And for example, gender, race, culture, learning differences, and sexual orientation. So we do a lot of circles on respecting differences. You can agree to disagree, but we want to make sure that everybody feels welcome here. And we'll continue to work on that question 1. As you can see, questions 2 and 3, they're all up in the 90s. So then if we look at question 4, students generally work well with each other even if they're not in the same group of friends. That one we went up 13%, but we're only at 64%. Some of that's just inherently middle school students. They have opinions about each other. And so our circles are then focused around, hey, you don't have to be best friends, but we can work together and you can gain knowledge and information from each other, even if you don't want to hang out with them on the weekend. And then the one other one is question 7. Students in my school treat each other with respect, which we find is interesting because they say students don't treat the teachers with respect, nor do they really treat each other with respect. So again, it's just this continual conversation about what is respect, what does it look like, and just middle school students, you know, it's a challenging time of their life, and so we're just trying to help them navigate through that process, and just to think a little bit more about really how to become a good human being.
They could have a very interesting definition of what respect is as a middle school student, and working them through that process of understanding what respect is can be, it's a growth thing. It takes time and a different mindset.
I feel like the biggest issue, or sometimes what they can't get over, is I treat people if they respect me, I respect them. They disrespect me, I disrespect them. And so then, you know, an eye for an eye leaves everybody blind. And it's also, how they respect you is who they are as a person, and how you respect them is who you are as a person. So it's getting people to respect each other, even if they feel like they've been slighted. And that's kind of been a tough shift to try to get going, but we're working on it.
So our SEL team, the main things they work on is we do community circles, and we do common daily topics. That makes it very easy for admin to walk through, to know, to have follow-up questions. We all know what we're doing on every day. We've really focused on routine expectations throughout our building. You'll notice if you walk through our building, it's visible in all the areas. There's expectations and routines on all the walls, in the commons, in the halls, in every classroom, and they're all the same depending on the area. Building relationships within advisors and classes. We make that top priority and continue to. Restorative practices. Rudy's been a great asset for that and just really helped paving that and making, I think, the teachers feel more comfortable with that process. He kind of guides the teachers and the students' path through that, and we think it's made a huge change. We've aligned our 5/8 SEL goals. In the past, we kind of did whatever we wanted each grade. And last year we had district initiatives, and that allowed us to make a 5/8 alignment. And then also just meeting monthly. That's probably the biggest thing. So we can talk to each other. We can really plan that all out for the whole next month. And then our next steps is really just to continue to dive into that adult to student relationships and student to student relationships. And that was our focus last year, and will continue to be this year. Our other focus this year is that growth mindset for our students and our staff. Questions? Thank you.
Just thank you for all you're doing. It's great to see the growth in most of the areas. It's a tough age.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for
Very
sharing.
good.
Yep, you're welcome.
All right, we'll move on into our old business, and we have a second reading of the policy.
So this, like Rex said, this is the second reading, so we went through these in August. Again, so every month we'll have a first reading and a second reading. We'll be on a consistent schedule, so we don't have to look at large chunks of our board policies, and we can just take small bites every month. There's two changes to these policies. In 404R1, the Code of Professional Conduct and Appearances, there's two additions to that code. One is standard 25.3, which is that compliance with state law governing obligations to state or local governments. And then the other one is standard 25.3, incompetence. The other changes would be in our employee travel compensation, that the travel compensation would be changed to the federal rate to those submitting logs. We have different employees in the district who are reimbursed for their travel, mostly from building to building, and that would change to 65 cents, which is what the current federal rate is and would be reviewed in July of every year. And the second change would be meal reimbursement. We've always had meal reimbursement, we just didn't have any dollars tied to it. So this would be employees when they're out doing business for the school would be reimbursed at $50 per day with no one meal exceeding $25 per day.
So we did go over those last month.
So completely okay with all the changes to the board policies in this second reading?
I'll second that motion.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Second readings are approved. New business, we actually have first reading.
First readings, and it's board policies on licensed employee resignation, licensed employee contract release, early retirement policy, which we don't have one, 407-4, licensed employee suspensions. All of those are current with the IASB recommendations. So our first reading of these policies is that there are no review, but those will be up for second reading in October, so no action needed now.
All right. Moving on into open enrollment.
We have 13 open enrollment applications for this month. I do recommend the approval of all these open enrollments as they all have met state requirements for approval. I think it's 6 in, 7 out.
What looks like it.
make a motion to approve the open enrollment.
Thank you, Andrea, thanks, Lynn. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Open enrollment's approved. Resignations.
We have 2 resignations for this month. Krista Bruns as a Lucia Wallace Teacher Associate and David Solbach from Food Service.
I'll make a motion to approve the resignations.
Thank you, John.
Seconded.
Thanks, Jay. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Resignations approved. We have a dismissal.
We have 1 employee who I recommend dismissal from their employment in the Algonquin Community School District.
Okay. Thank you. All right, we have a motion and a second then. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Dismissal approved. And the last one before we adjourn, we have some contracts.
New contracts, Jordan Gorham as a middle school teacher associate, Greg Leslie, bus driver substitute, Allison Jones, middle school teacher associate, Mallory Zwiefel, high school teacher associate. She will also be our speech sponsor and our drama screenplay sponsor. Mandy Bitsum, high school ELL teacher associate, Brad Sudol, middle school girls basketball, and Aaron Cogdill, middle school teacher associate.
We have a motion for approval, we have a second.
Second.
All right, thanks, Todd, we have a second. Any further discussion?
And didn't you put in a note or something that our associates were fully staffed?
First time in over 3 years.
That's awesome.
Yeah, first time in over 3 years we've been full in that department.
Just the wages look like maybe it's helping a little. All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Contracts approved. All right, all we need now at this point is a motion for adjournment. Got it? We have a second?
I'll second
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for the night. Have a good night and a great discussion.